China is moving forward with reform plans designed to build a stronger, modern military. The recently announced reforms include the formation of China's rocket force and strategic support force. For more on the reform plan and the upgrading of the People's Liberation Army, we begin with this report from CCTV's Han Bin in Beijing.
A big rise in the status of China's Second Artillery Force, the PLA's Strategic Deterrent Force. It's been officially renamed as China's Rocket Force, making the PLA a joint forces with the Land, Navy and the Air Force. In addition, the Strategic Support Force has been formed to highlight the importance of electronics and space in military strategies.
The formation of the Rocket Force and the Strategic Support Force is a major decision made by the Central Military Commission to realize the dreams of a strong army. It's also a crucial measure in rebuilding a modern force.
The newly established forces are only part of the ongoing reforms the army is undertaking. The Central Military Commission released a key statement revealing the direction of the process and stressing their determination to achieve the reforms. The key message is the strengthening of the army leadership and the move away from its decades-old land-centric system towards a joint command system that will upgrade the army's overall capabilities.
The reform statement clarifies why there's a need to reform, what to reform, how to reform. It makes clear requirements for the army and will play a supporting role.
Guidelines for China's military reform plans were announced in November as President Xi Jinping vowed a breakthrough in the overhaul by 2020. President Xi's statement indicates that the current 7 military command regions will be transformed into several combat areas to better coordinate joint operational strength. China has decided to cut 300,000 troops, which will leave 2 million personnel in the army. China wants to build a modern military system that can potentially win an information-based war. Many believe the reform of the military is a major task for the leadership. It will deeply transform the army and the country's security landscape.
Well, it's been decades since the Chinese armed forces have faced an actual military conflict. But the army believes the best way to avoid it is by having the capabilities to deter it. The PLA is undergoing a deep transformation and focusing more on quality. The direction is clearer now, but the true value of the restructuring may take some time to quantify.
Han Bin, CCTV, Beijing.
Joining me now from Beijing is Chu Hui. He is a Deputy Commandant of the College of Defense Studies at the National Defense University of China, and he served in the Chinese Army and Navy. Welcome to the show, sir. Professor, last November, China announced a plan and guidelines to reform the armed forces by 2020. That's, of course, an effort to build a strong and modernized army with Chinese characteristics. Could you guide us through the key steps of the military reform?
Okay, the overall military and national defense reform has already started since last year. And we can say, generally speaking, there are 4 steps and 4 levels of reform also. The first step and first level is to have a new leadership and commanding systems which can keep the pace with the times and make this military more capable. And the second level is about restructuring and recompensation of the military. And the third level is for the policy change and reforms for personnel policy and the logistic and financial policies of the military. And the fourth level we call it civil military integration development. Up to now, the first level has been done, and all of the positions of the CMC have been filled, and the 5 armed command has been established, and also the different services has been also, the leadership has been made. And now we are going to, enter into the second level on the second step. That is the restructuring of the forces and recompensation of the forces. At the same time, we will start the policy change and the civil military integration development.
Right, now part of this overhaul plan is to cut troop levels by something like 300,000. Will that be difficult to achieve? How soon do you see it being done? And what are some of the major challenges in accomplishing that?
Oh yes, for a number of 300,000 troops reduction is a daunting force. It's no easy job for any military, and it will take a longer time. But we're determined to implement this kind of reform by the end of 2017. Yes, absolutely, it will have a lot of difficulties. Number one difficulty is, I think, coming from the people's mindset, and also, it will touch upon the people's the personal interest. For instance, some of the military officers will be, transformed from military to the civilians, and the families will be moved to other places. And some of the forces also will be redeployed, and some new elements will be created. So it's a very complicated issue. It will spend a lot of efforts. But up to now, I think, from the people's mindset level, we have unified, understandings of that and determined to taken all of the difficulties. I'm sure that by the year of 2017, it will be done. But it will have further jobs need to be done to make fully implementation of the reform program up to 2020.
Now, China has said that there will be no changes to its national defense policy or its military strategy. Why is China engaging in military reform at this time?
It's a very interesting question. So what I want to say is that we say no fundamental change of the national defense policy doesn't mean that we cannot have military reform. And while we have military reforms, it doesn't mean that we will fundamentally change our national defense policy. That's the logic. And as to the Chinese national defense policy, since the founding of PRC, this overall national defense policy has never been changed. We call it active defense. That means we'll never attack unless we are attacked. And we'll certainly counterattack if we were attacked. For that, we say we have never changed. But there are some kind of changes. For that, for instance, the capability of fighting and deterring wars and addressing a variety of challenges will be improved, and Chinese military will be more ready to take more contributions, to make more contributions to regional and world peace. Will provide more public security good for regional and global securities. And Chinese military will be more confident and more ready to engage with other militaries for cooperation in dealing with the common threats we are faced.
What are the messages do you think other countries will be receiving from this ongoing reform program that's been adopted by the Chinese?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think different people perceive the same thing differently. I think according to my knowledge, I think majority of the countries in global community, I think we have more than 200 countries, majority of them, I think they perceive this kind of military reform of China positively, and they think this is a natural development with the overall strength of the country, and they have a very high expectation of China to taking more, contributions to regional peace keeping and to cooperation with other countries. But however, there are some other countries, but I have to say very small number of countries, in the region which have a territory disputes with China, and some major powers who have a kind of, different, security concept. They might perceive these rounds of reform differently.
Now, just to get back to a point you made just now, China is not a traditional military power like the United States or like Russia. As you pointed out, the key objective of the Chinese army is national security. But given China's major economic power status right now, do you think China will assume more responsibilities in international peacekeeping operations, for example, with this modernized army?
I think my answer to you is positive. As we know that Chinese military is, generally speaking, is a, inward-looking military. His main task is to defend his territory and sovereignty and maintain regional peace and security to create a good environment for his people's livings here. And we have very few experiences to do operations overseas. And the biggest differences between Chinese military and American military and the Russian military is that for the past 3 or 4 decades, Chinese military has no shooting, have never shot a single bullet. So we really don't have a kind of experience, but that doesn't mean Chinese military will take less responsibilities. Actually, since the 1990s, Chinese military engaged in peacekeeping, and just within a couple of years, China has made the greatest contribution for personnel in peacekeeping among the P5 countries, and also contribute more than most of the countries in engineering and healthcare and something else in terms of peacekeeping under the authorization of the UN authorities. And the Chinese military is determined to contribute more in that regards in the future.